The radio hissed through the snow-buried wreckage, a harsh voice slicing through the static. "Leave her behind." It landed like a verdict. She lay there in the drift, rifle scope shattered beside her, her blood turning the Christmas snow a dark, ugly red. No one glanced back, no last look. Somewhere in the hollow remains of Varkova, a lone church bell tolled for Christmas Eve. They walked away from her. What they never realized was that she was still drawing shallow, angry breaths. And when she came back, she wasn't planning on returning alone. 6 days before Christmas, the Joint Task Force moved through what was left of the border city's skeleton. Snow, drifting down like pale ash, over gutted buildings and frozen streets. Lieutenant Riley Vaughn adjusted her ruined scope, her breath fogging the frigid air. Through her thermal sight, the collapsed Orthodox Church, about 300 meters out, shimmered with faint heat signatures. 4 enemies, maybe a 5th lurking lower. "Echo 3, report!" Captain Damon Cade crackled into her earpiece. "Tower shows 4 confirmed. Possible 5th on ground level." Riley kept her tone steady, despite the cold creeping through her white camo. Behind her, Sergeant Cole Mercer shifted, his boot crunching ice. "Still think sending a woman out for winter recon was a bright idea?" Captain Cade didn't answer, but Riley caught the telltale pause. She'd heard Mercer's doubts in a dozen different forms over the 8 months she'd been with this team. Her last commander had handpicked her for her record: 43 confirmed kills, longest clean shot at 1,147 meters. Numbers didn't bend the temperature in a barracks or win trust in foxholes. "Echo 3, hold position. We're moving to your 6, Cade ordered, voice clipped and empty. Riley sank deeper into her hideout, a collapsed apartment level that gave her a decent view and solid cover. The mission looked simple on paper: slip into contested territory, locate enemy snipers, take out high-value threats blocking the humanitarian corridor, and get out before dawn. Simple. Except none of it felt like that. Intel had been thin, support even thinner, and the way Cade had positioned her earlier, farthest from extraction, had set off a quiet alarm she couldn't shake. "Thermal spike, northeast corner," Private Aaron Vale murmured from Overwatch. "Could be a generator. Or a trap," Mercer muttered. Riley swept her scope across the building's concrete face. Old Soviet design. All blunt purpose and no beauty. Perfect for defenders. Empty windows stared back like hollow sockets, any of them capable of hiding a marksman, or no one at all. A string of forgotten Christmas lights hung limp on one surviving balcony, tangled and dead. Someone once lived here, celebrated here. Now it was just another cold square on a board nobody back home bothered to follow anymore. "Echo actual movement. Confirmed Tango 5 at the south entrance." Riley kept her finger resting beside the trigger guard, never on it, not until the moment was locked in. "Weapons free on my mark," Cade said. Snow thickened. Static bled into her earpiece. The damaged church bell clanged 7 dull, uneven times. Riley counted her heartbeats, 53 per minute, right where she needed them. Mark. Her shot split the silence like fractured ice. The 7.62 round cut through the falling snow, streaking across the space where Christmas used to hold meaning, slicing through the crosshairs that had become Riley's entire world. The hostile in the church tower crumpled instantly. Clean, center mass. "Tango 1 down," she reported. And then everything went sideways. The building didn't answer with gunfire, but with a violent eruption. Someone had rigged the church, and Riley's shot must have triggered a pressure switch or a watcher's detonator. The tower folded inward, stone, timber, and old concrete collapsing in a deadly cascade. But that wasn't the worst part. The real danger came from the secondary blast. This one directly beneath her. The apartment floor buckled. She plunged into darkness and debris, her rifle smashing against stone, something jagged tearing into her left side. The world spun, noise, dust, pain. And with it came the awful realization that this wasn't an accident. Someone had planned for her to take this perch. They'd wired it. They'd waited. She hit the next floor hard, her left leg twisting wrong, her ribs shrieking in protest. Her scope was cracked, maybe the rifle stock too. Her radio hissed with static, and she felt something warm on her fingers. Blood, most likely her own. "Echo 3 is down!" Vale's voice cracked through the chaos, high with panic. "Building collapsed! Echo 3 is down!" Riley tried to key her radio, but pain flared through her ribs like a knife. Too broken, at least. Her leg pulsed with agony, but moved when she forced it. Sprained, not shattered. Survivable. "Echo 3, report." Captain Cade's tone carried something that wasn't concern. Something that made Riley's already pounding pulse hitch. "Echo 3? "Compromised. Position," she managed, coughing, tasting metal. "Need extraction." Gunfire erupted outside, close. The enemy had been waiting for the collapse, waiting for the moment to close in. "All units fall back to Rally Point Beta," Cade ordered instantly. "Enemy force is larger than expected." "We're outnumbered, sir," Vale protested. "Rally Point Beta." "That's an order." Riley dragged herself toward the mangled window frame. Through the veil of snow and smoke, she saw her team pulling away, heading 2 clicks north toward extraction, away from her. She keyed the radio again. "Echo Actual. I'm mobile. Can reach secondary exfil." Only static answered at first. Then came voices leaking through damaged frequencies. Voices meant for someone else, but bleeding into her channel. Mercer. "We go back for her. We're all dead." Vale. "We don't leave people behind." Cade. "She's in a hot zone. Structure's compromised. And we've got 20 hostiles pushing our position. We leave now, or none of us make it." A pause followed, long enough for Riley to feel the truth settle like frost in her chest. "Leave her behind." The words hung in the frozen air. Cold, blunt, final. "Leave her behind." Captain Cade didn't stutter. He didn't hesitate. 3 quiet syllables that shattered every promise drilled into soldiers. The ones about loyalty, about never abandoning one of your own. "Sir," Vale's objection cut off sharply. "That's an order. Echo 3's position is gone. We've got 3 minutes before we're surrounded. Move out." Riley's hand tightened around the radio. She heard everything. Every retreating footstep crunching through snow. Every rationalization Cade would someday give himself. Every excuse he'd write into a report to explain why leaving her was necessary. There was always another choice. She tried to respond, to tell them she could still fight, that if they just covered her for 30 seconds, she could make it out. But her ribs wouldn't allow more than a thin wheeze, swallowed by static and her own uneven breathing. Through the shattered window, she watched their shapes fade into the whiteout, 6 silhouettes slipping into the dark. The closest thing she'd had to a family in 8 months, walking away and leaving her like debris in a burning building. Enemy voices grew louder. Russian commands, sharp and coordinated. They were clearing structures one by one, steady and professional. They would reach her in minutes. Riley forced herself to think past the pain. First came assessment. Feelings could wait. Feelings could get her killed. Left leg, severe sprain, maybe a torn ligament. Usable, but only if she was willing to suffer for every step. Ribs, at least 2 cracked, maybe 3. Breathing hurt, moving hurt more. Her scope was totaled. The rifle stock cracked, but still workable. 12 rounds left. Her sidearm was untouched. 3 mags ready. The radio barely functioned, but it received enough for her to hear the fading chatter of her team pulling farther away. She figured she had about 4 minutes before the enemy swept this level. The ruined bell somewhere in Varkova tolled again for Christmas Eve. Somewhere far from this place, families were gathering, kids buzzing with anticipation, people singing carols and pretending the world wasn't full of corners where promises meant nothing and survival was sold at full price. Riley hauled herself across the wreckage, dragging her injured leg, each movement a bargain with pain. A half-collapsed doorway led deeper into darkness, and beneath that darkness, she heard boots on the stairs. She checked her rifle, pulled the bolt back, a single round chambered. The scope was useless, but the iron sights still worked. Close quarters would have to be enough. In her head, she heard her father's voice from 2 decades ago, from the forests of Silver Range County, where he'd taught her how to fire her first rifle. The same words he'd whispered when she'd missed her first shot. Doesn't matter what just happened. What matters is what you do next. What she did next was vanish into the ruins. Lieutenant Riley Vaughn slipping into the guts of the shattered apartment building with a damaged rifle and a promise burning in her chest. If she made it through this, she'd make sure they remembered her. Not as the woman they abandoned, as the one who returned. Darkness swallowed her as she moved through the broken concrete like a ghost. Every step was measured. Every breath stabbed at her ribs. The enemy was meticulous. She could hear them clearing rooms one by one, calm and professional. She found a narrow crawl space behind a collapsed bathroom and wedged herself into the gap between the walls, forcing her body into absolute stillness. Footsteps passed so close, she could feel the vibrations. Flashlights brushed through drifting dust. Russian commands echoed briefly, then faded. Silence reclaimed the space. Hours bled together. The cold crept in until it felt almost familiar, the pain settling into something steady and predictable. When she finally checked her watch, it read 2,147 hours. Christmas Eve, 3 hours before midnight. She thought about her last Christmas, the one at her sister's place in North Haven. Chaos, warmth, kids who didn't fully grasp what Aunt Riley actually did, only that she wore a uniform and kept disappearing for long stretches. She remembered the tree, the laughter, and the vow she made after burying her brother, a Marine killed by an IED in Kandahar. She would serve in a unit that never left anyone behind. Funny how promises aged. Her radio crackled now and then. Her team had reached extraction. Captain Cade was filing reports. She caught fragments. Heavy contact. Structure collapse. No recovery possible. No one said her name. Midnight came. The battered church bell tolled again, indifferent, counting time for no one. Riley allowed herself 5 minutes. 5 minutes to feel everything. The betrayal, the fear, the sharp truth that she was alone in hostile territory, with dwindling ammo, busted mobility, and zero support. 5 minutes to be human. Then she buried it all, beside every other scar she'd ever learned to carry. She had 12 rounds, 3 pistol mags, a knife, and the skills that once made her the best shot in her battalion. The enemy believed she was dead or captured. Her own team thought she was already a lost cause. That gave her one priceless advantage. Nobody would expect her to be the hunter. She checked her leg again. The swelling had only gotten worse. Riley tore off part of her sleeve and wrapped it tight around her swollen leg, creating a makeshift compression bandage. Just enough support without cutting off circulation. Her ribs were beyond help. Every inhale stabbed like a blade, but broken ribs didn't kill you quickly. Not usually. She waited until 0300 hours, when human alertness hit rock bottom, then started moving. The ruined apartments were a maze of debris and ghosts. A child's toy half buried in dust, a family photo still clinging to a cracked wall. Glass gone, but the smiling faces untouched. A Christmas card in Cyrillic lay half buried, never sent. People had lived here once, right up until the war turned daily life into archaeology. She found a stairwell leading down to the basement, half collapsed but passable. Below it lay the old maintenance tunnels, relics of Soviet-era paranoia when every building supposedly needed escape routes. Riley descended into the dark, leaving whatever was left of Christmas behind her. The tunnels were an icy graveyard, concrete arteries webbing beneath the dead city, pipes long cold, electrical lines stripped for copper. But the emptiness was reassuring. Empty meant survivable. She moved slowly, saving energy, letting her eyes adjust to the dim glow from the occasional ventilation grates, where moonlight and drifting snow slipped through. Her leg pulsed with every step, her ribs forcing shallow breaths, but she kept going. 3 hours into her underground trek, she stumbled upon a body. Enemy soldier, dead roughly 2 days. No wounds. Probably froze or drank something contaminated. His uniform fit her well enough. The gear was untouched. She stripped it for anything useful. Spare ammunition for a Makarov she didn't own. Still good 9mm rounds, food bars, water purification tablets, and a functioning radio tuned to enemy frequencies. Best of all, she found a detailed map of the tunnel system, covered in pencil markings. Someone had been navigating these passages recently. Riley scanned the map by flashlight, memorizing every route and jotting down enemy positions mentally. Near the southwest quadrant, she noticed a small note. American safe point. Maybe real, maybe bait. She didn't have the luxury of choosing. As she pushed deeper into the tunnels, signs of the war's hidden underbelly emerged. Spent rounds, shredded packaging, dark frozen stains where someone had bled out alone. This was the forgotten battleground, where no drones flew, no reporters watched, and no one bothered to count the bodies. On the second day, she heard voices. She froze, slipping behind a concrete support pillar. English, American accents. That meant nothing. Enemy units used recordings, hostages, anything to lure out survivors. She waited, studying shadows, breathing quiet and controlled. 3 figures came into view, moving with the unmistakable precision of elite operators. Night vision goggles, M4 carbines. That certain posture American Special Forces carried. Navy insignia on their gear, SEALs. Riley weighed her options. Reveal herself and risk being baited, or stay hidden and possibly lose her only shot at extraction. Her damaged radio made the decision for her by shrieking out a burst of static. Instantly, 3 barrels locked onto her location. "Federal agent!" Riley called, using the outdated recognition phrase her unit had once been issued. Wrong for SEALs, but it proved one thing. She wasn't Russian. "Step out, hands visible." Riley emerged slowly, palms raised, rifle strapped behind her. Their flashlights washed over her face, caked blood, hollow eyes, exhaustion etched deep. The lid SEAL lowered his rifle just a fraction. "Who the hell are you?" "Lieutenant Riley Vaughn, Task Force Echo," she said. "I was abandoned in the church quarter 3 days ago." The 3 men exchanged guarded looks. Their leader, a chief petty officer by his insignia, Levi Drake, studied her like he was measuring threat, capability, and truth all at once. "You're a long way from your unit, Lieutenant." "My unit left me behind." The words settled heavily in the tunnel air. No SEAL took that lightly. No SEAL would ever make that choice. Leaving a wounded soldier behind broke every code they lived by. "You operational?" the chief asked. Riley forced herself upright despite the pain gnawing at her ribs. "I can shoot. I can move. And I know this sector better than anyone." "We're on a recovery mission," Chief Drake said. "Downed pilot. We're 2 days behind schedule. You know the Eastern Quadrant?" Riley pulled out the captured map. "Better than that. I know exactly where your pilot is." The SEALs introduced themselves in short, efficient motions. Chief Warrant Officer Levi Drake, Petty Officer First Class Mason Lockridge, and Petty Officer Second Class Finn Calder. They'd been operating behind enemy lines for 6 days, searching for an F-16 pilot who'd punched out over the contested zone. They moved like a single organism, professional, quiet, skeptical of the Army sniper who'd crawled out of the tunnels like a ghost. Drake studied the map Riley handed him. "Where'd you get this?" "Off an enemy scout," Riley said. "He'd been tracking tunnel activity for 3 days before hypothermia got him." And you think our pilot is here? Drake tapped a section scribbled with Russian notes. That's a holding site, Riley explained. They're using it as a forward interrogation point. If he's still alive, that's where they'll keep him. Layered security. Minimum 4 guards, maybe more. Motion sensors. Reinforced entry. Lockridge, who'd been examining her battered rifle, chimed in. Your scope's toast. I noticed. How's your close quarters work? Better than my people skills, Riley replied. Calder smirked. She might actually fit in. Drake made his decision. We hit the facility at 0400. You give us intel and overwatch from a secondary spot. But Vaughn, if this is a trap, if you're compromised, I won't hesitate. If I were compromised, Chief, Riley said evenly, I would have waited for a full unit, not 3 SEALs hiding in a tunnel. Fair point. Drake checked his watch. 40 minutes. Lockridge, check her injuries. Calder, get her up to speed on our protocol. We do this clean. We do it quiet. He met Riley's eyes. And we don't leave anyone behind. The weight behind those words wasn't subtle. He knew exactly what had happened to her. His team operated differently. Lockridge examined her injuries with unexpected gentleness. Ribs are a mess. Legs worse. You should be in a field hospital. There are no field hospitals. There are if you know where to look. He injected a local anesthetic. This'll last 6 hours. After that, you're going to crash hard. 6 hours is all I need. Calder briefed her on their tactical language, signals, emergency contingencies. SEAL procedures weren't Army procedures, but Riley adapted fast. Adaptation meant survival. By 0350, they were on the move. The eastern quadrant was lined with old industrial factories, once used for agricultural equipment, now repurposed into military strongholds. Their target was a reinforced warehouse originally designed for hazardous material storage. Thick concrete walls, few entrances, ideal for detention. Riley set up on an elevated gantry with a clear shot to the main entrance. Her scope was useless, but at 75 meters, iron sights would do. Lockridge had given her a modified suppressor, imperfect, but workable. Drake, Lockridge, and Calder ghosted toward the warehouse's blind side, slipping through the shadows and gaps in the security grid Riley had identified from the Russian map. She watched through iron sights as the guards paced. 4, visible, rotating every 15 minutes. Disciplined, professional. This wasn't militia. This was trained military. Echo 1 in position, Drake murmured in her earpiece. Riley keyed her mic. Overwatch set. 4 visible, possible 2 inside. On my mark. The operation unfolded like clockwork. Calder killed power to the motion sensors. Lockridge set a shaped charge on the rear door, precisely calibrated to breach, without alerting half the city. Drake moved with liquid certainty, quiet, controlled, inevitable. Riley's role was simple: stop anyone from reaching the alarm. The moment the charge went off, 2 guards pivoted toward the noise. Riley's rifle whispered twice. Both dropped, non-lethal hits to the legs. Trained incapacitation, exactly as she'd been taught. But the 3rd guard reacted faster. He lunged toward the alarm, and Riley's rushed shot, thrown off by the pain ripping through her ribs, caught his shoulder instead of his leg. He toppled backward, his hand slapping the alarm panel as he fell. Alarm's active, Riley reported. 3 minutes until response teams. Drake's voice stayed perfectly calm. Copy. We're inside. Those next 3 minutes dragged like hours. Riley swept the perimeter through her iron sights, watching for the first signs of enemy reinforcements, while her radio rattled with clipped SEAL coordination from inside. Then, package secure, Drake transmitted. Pilot's alive. We're exfiling now. The SEALs emerged carrying a limping man in a damaged flight suit, Captain Jonah Creed, according to his tag. He looked beaten up, broken arm, dehydration, bruises from interrogation, but he was alert and moving on his own. Response team incoming, Riley warned. 2 vehicles from the northeast. Copy. Overwatch. Relocate to Exfil Point Beta, Drake ordered. Riley pushed herself into motion, every step a negotiation with her battered body, weaving through the industrial ruins as Drake, Lockridge, and Calder covered their withdrawal. By the time the enemy response team stormed the warehouse, they were already 4 minutes too late. The group regrouped at an abandoned metro station. Creed slumped against a support beam, while Lockridge checked him over. His injuries ugly, but not life-threatening. His eyes, though exhausted, were grateful. "You're the sniper?" Creed asked Riley. "I'm a sniper," she said. Drake added, "She's the one who found us." "I was motivated to find someone who wasn't Russian," Riley replied dryly. Creed managed a faint smile. "Well, you picked the right crowd." Drake was watching Riley differently now. His earlier assessment replaced with something more solid. Respect. Maybe even understanding. "Your unit abandoned you," he said. Not a question. "Yes." "Where are they now?" "Safe. Extracted. Probably filing reports about how tragic my death was." "They think you're dead?" "They want me dead," Riley said. "Makes their story cleaner. No messy questions about why they left me behind." Drake exchanged a look with Lockridge and Calder. Silent communication, born from too many shared missions. "How would you feel about helping them regret that?" Drake asked. The old metro station became their impromptu operations center. Creed could walk. Calder set up a secure radio link to their extraction point, nearly 40 clicks north. But Drake wasn't preparing to leave. He was planning something else entirely. "Task Force Echo," Drake said. "They're still in the AO, right?" Riley cycled through enemy frequencies on the scavenged radio until she found American chatter. "Northern Extraction Zone. Grid Echo 47. They've been waiting 3 days for transport." "3 days?" Lockridge muttered. "Too long to sit in enemy territory." "They're waiting for something," Riley said. "Or someone." Drake pulled up a terrain map on his tablet. "Show me." Riley pointed out the coordinates. Drake's face darkened as he analyzed the terrain lines. "They're in a natural kill box," he said quietly. "Ridges on 3 sides. Only 1 exit. 0 elevation advantage." "If the enemy wanted to wipe out an American unit," Calder added, "they'd put them exactly there." A cold weight settled in Riley's stomach. "You think Echo was compromised?" she asked. "I think your intel was way too convenient," Drake replied. "You were sent in with bad data. Your position was pre-rigged. Their extraction zone is tactically suicidal. That's not coincidence, Lieutenant. That's a setup." And suddenly, all the strange details from the mission snapped together in Riley's mind, like falling dominoes. The assignment placements that hadn't made sense, Captain Cade's insistence on specific positions, Mercer's constant digs, the subtle undermining of her abilities, as if he'd been laying groundwork for a story about her inevitable failure, and that suspiciously convenient intel that dropped them right into a perfect ambush. "They need to be warned," Riley said, voice steady. "They left you for dead," Lockridge reminded her, though he said it gently. "They're still Americans," she replied. Drake nodded, as if that answer confirmed something he'd already suspected about her. "We're 40 clicks from Echo's position. 1 injured pilot, limited ammo, and maybe 12 hours before the Russians figure out we pulled Creed out of that facility." "So we should be heading to our extraction point," Calder said. But his tone made it clear he already knew Drake had other plans. "We should," Drake agreed. "But we're not." He turned to Riley. "Can you get us to Echo without being spotted using these tunnels?" "Yes. It'll take 8 hours and it'll be hell, but it's possible." She met his eyes. "And once we're there, I lead. I know every defensive position Cade set, every contingency he built, every gap he ignored. I know that perimeter better than they do." Drake studied her for a long, thoughtful moment. "This isn't revenge, is it? No, Riley said. It's doing the job the way it should have been done from the beginning. You realize showing up alive is going to cause a lot of trouble for Captain Cade. Good, Drake almost smiled. All right then. We move in 20. Lockridge, gather the medical supplies. Calder, redistribute ammo. Creed, can you walk? The pilot straightened despite the pain twisting his face. I've been worse. And after 3 days with Russian interrogators, a tunnel hike sounds like a holiday. They readied their gear in near silence. Efficient, practiced. Riley tested her rifle again. It still worked, despite the mangled scope. Lockridge handed her another dose of painkillers, enough to keep her going 12 hours, and no longer. She would crash hard when it wore off. Just before they set out, Drake pulled Riley aside. When we reach them, they'll have a choice, he said quietly. Accept help from the person they abandoned, or refuse out of pride and die. Cade might choose pride. That's on him, Riley said, checking her rifle one more time. And if he does choose pride? Then we save them anyway, she said. That's what you do for soldiers. Even the ones who don't deserve it, Drake nodded. Exactly the right answer. The 5 of them descended into the tunnels, moving through darkness toward a reckoning none of them could fully predict. Behind them, a strand of dead Christmas lights still hung from the ruins like a memory refusing to burn out. Ahead, somewhere in the freezing night, Task Force Echo sat in their kill box, unaware that the soldier they'd left to die was coming back, not as the woman they'd abandoned, but as their only shot at survival. They reached Echo's location at 0613 hours, emerging from a tunnel mouth roughly 300 meters south of the main perimeter. Dawn barely brushed the horizon, and fresh snow covered any tracks they'd left. Riley brought a borrowed scope to her eye. Drake had been right. Echo was boxed in. Cade had set the perimeter in a shallow valley, surrounded on 3 sides by ridgelines. Any decent commander would have seized the high ground. He'd given it up. How bad? Drake asked. Worse than you think, Riley said. See that tree line at 11 o'clock? Perfect cover for enemy shooters. And the southern ridge. At least 6 good firing positions with overlapping fields of fire. And Cade stuck his heaviest guns facing east. The one direction that's actually safe. Lockridge scanned with his own optics. It's like he wants them to get hit. Maybe he does, Calder muttered. Ambush goes wrong. Everyone dies. No awkward questions about abandoned soldiers. Riley wanted to reject that outright, but she couldn't. Nothing about this mission had made sense. Cade had been far too composed when ordering her abandonment. Too quick, as if he'd been waiting for the excuse. Enemy positions, Drake asked. Riley swept the ridgelines, mapping heat signatures and patterns of movement. North Ridge, around 12 hostiles. East, maybe 8. But the southern ridge, she slowed. Professional spacing, proper fortifications, not militia. Russian regulars. A platoon at minimum, maybe more. Drake did the math, silently. Task Force Echo, 12 soldiers. The enemy, at least 40, with superior terrain and the element of surprise. And Echo had no idea what was about to hit them. The enemy had at least 40 fighters positioned with superior angles and a clear tactical edge. When's the attack coming? Creed asked, his voice tight. Soon, Riley answered. Their patrols have been sweeping this whole area for 2 days straight. That's prep work for a major strike. I'd say we've got under 2 hours. Then we warn them now, Drake said. They're not going to take my word for it, Riley replied. But they might believe what they hear. Drake switched his radio to American frequencies. Task Force Echo, this is SEAL Team 7, requesting immediate contact. Static. Then a pause. Then, SEAL Team 7, verify authorization code. Drake supplied it. Another long silence followed, before a different voice, tight, suspicious, cut in. Captain Damon Cade, SEAL Team 7, what's your status? "We're 300 meters south of your perimeter," Drake said. "We have critical intelligence. Your defensive posture is compromised. You're sitting in a kill box, and enemy forces are preparing a coordinated assault." "Our intel shows no enemy presence in this sector," Cade argued. "Your intel is wrong," Drake replied. "We've got eyes on at least 40 hostiles across the ridgeline around your position." The line went dead quiet. Riley could picture Cade's face as he ran the math, weighed his options, and realized how bad the situation really was. "How did you obtain this intelligence?" Cade finally asked. "From someone who knows the terrain," Drake said flatly. "Someone who's been surviving out here for the last 3 days." Another pause. "Who?" Drake looked at Riley and offered her the handset. She took it. "Hello, Captain. Lieutenant Riley Vaughn speaking. I'm back from the dead, and I'm here to save your life." The silence that followed was so thick, it felt physical. Riley counted 15 seconds before Cade's voice returned, shaken in a way she had never heard before. "Vaughn, how?" "Turns out, getting left behind in enemy territory is highly motivating," she said. "Now listen carefully. You're parked in a tactical disaster. Enemy forces are prepping a full assault. You've got about 90 minutes to move, or Task Force Echo becomes a footnote on a casualty list. Your intel was compromised from the beginning. Someone set you up." Behind the radio static, Riley could hear frantic murmurs, Mercer's voice, Vale's voice, urgent, confused. Drake took the radio back. "Captain Cade, this is Chief Warrant Officer Levi Drake. Lieutenant Vaughn has been operating with my team for the last 24 hours. Her intel led to the successful extraction of a downed F-16 pilot. Her tactical assessment matches mine. I strongly advise you reposition immediately to the Eastern Ridge." "The Eastern Ridge is exposed," Cade argued, though his confidence was slipping fast. "It has height, clear sight lines, and defensible ground," Drake countered. "Your current position has none of that. You're in a pit, Captain. We're offering you a way out." More static. More voices rising behind Cade. Then Vale's voice cut through, steady, firm. "Sir, permission to move to the northern ridge and confirm their intel." "Denied," Cade snapped. Too fast, too defensive. Riley grabbed the radio again. "Captain, you've got 11 soldiers counting on you to make the right call. I know you don't want me alive. I know my survival complicates your report, but your team didn't choose to abandon me. They don't deserve to die for your pride." "That's insubordinate," Cade said sharply. "I'm not under your command anymore," Riley answered. "You made sure of that when you walked away from me. But I'm still going to save you, because that's what soldiers do." Drake gestured to his team, signaling them to take up supporting positions as Riley finished speaking. The team shifted into position, creating overlapping fields of fire designed to cover Echo's entire perimeter. Even battered and bruised, Creed took up a defensive stance with the sidearm Riley had helped retrieve for him. "Echo Actual," Drake said over the radio. "You have 1 hour. After that, the enemy hits you. Move now and live, or stay put and pray your compromised intel holds. Your call." Silence followed. Riley watched through her borrowed scope as movement rippled through Echo's camp. Soldiers adjusting gear, shifting their cover. Someone down there, likely Vale, was preparing despite Cade's hesitation. "They're not repositioning," Lockridge muttered. "Cade won't give the order," Riley replied. "He can't. Doing that means admitting the entire mission was built on bad intel." "Then we shield them from their own terrible choices," Drake said. He keyed into the SEAL command channel. "Lighthouse, this is Echo 7. Multiple American units at risk. Request immediate air support. Grid Echo 47. The reply came fast. "Echo 7, air support 30 minutes out. Can you hold?" "We'll have to," Drake answered before turning back to his people. "Standard defense in depth. Vaughn, you're our long-range asset. Pick your angles and make every shot matter. Lockridge, Calder, start prepping fallback positions. Creed, you're on comms. When they move, it'll be fast. The next hour unraveled with grim predictability. At 07:42, the first mortar round struck Echo's camp. Not a direct hit, but a probing shot to gauge response. 3 more followed, each closer, each perfectly paced. Echo fired back, but their position was far too exposed. Cade finally ordered a reposition, but the enemy had already launched their assault. Riley found her first target, a spotter on the northern ridge, calling in mortar fire. Using only iron sights and instinct, she compensated for wind and elevation. 1 clean shot. The barrage instantly lost precision. Drake and his SEALs hit the western approach, their suppressed fire and coordinated movements making them look like a much larger force. The enemy hesitated, but they still outnumbered them badly. "Echo's pulling back," Lockridge called. Through her scope, Riley saw Echo trying to retreat toward the eastern ridge in a staggered fight, but casualties were mounting. Mercer was down with a leg wound. Vale was trying to drag him while rounds snapped overhead. Both were exposed. Riley swept the battlefield, eliminating threats as fast as she could identify them. A machine gunner prepping his weapon. Her round slammed into his shoulder, knocking him off balance. A squad leader attempting to coordinate a flank. Her next shot sent his unit ducking for cover. Each recoil sent a lightning strike through her broken ribs. Her legs screamed in protest. The painkillers Lockridge had given her were fading fast, replaced by raw, grinding agony. She took another shot, then another. 12 rounds left. 10, 8. "Air support inbound," Creed reported. 2 minutes. Drake's voice cut through the radio. "Echo's pinned in the open. They won't reach the ridge." Riley saw it too. Cade and 6 others crouched in a shallow depression, enemy forces converging from 2 angles. They had maybe 60 seconds before they were wiped out. "I can reach them," she said. "No," Drake snapped. "You're too valuable up here. They'll die if you leave Overwatch. And you will too." Riley looked through her sights one more time. She saw Cade, the man who'd ordered her abandoned, firing wildly at advancing Russians. She saw Vale desperately trying to stabilize Mercer's bleeding leg under fire. She saw soldiers who hadn't chosen to leave her, soldiers who had simply followed orders. In her head, her brother's voice echoed from years ago, right before he deployed. "Sometimes the only way out is through." Riley stood. Every injury screamed in protest. "Vaughn!" Drake barked. But she was already moving, limping hard down the slope toward Echo, rifle in hand, legs threatening to buckle with every stride. Rounds cracked past her, but she ignored them, focusing only on closing the distance, on doing the job that should have been done from the start. She reached the lip of the depression and dropped into it, landing on her injured leg. Pain flared white-hot, stealing her breath, but she forced herself upright. "Vaughn?" Vale's voice cracked with shock and relief. "Move," Riley ordered. "Eastern Ridge now, I'll cover you." Cade stared at her, blood streaking his face, uniform torn to hell. "You're alive." "Yes," she said sharply. "We'll talk about that later. Right now, get your people moving or they're dead." For once, Cade didn't argue. He snapped into command mode, directing soldiers to retreat in pairs, dragging the wounded, covering each other as they staggered toward higher ground. Riley planted herself at the rim of the depression and went to work. 3 enemy soldiers pushed in from the west. She dropped all 3 with quick leg shots. 2 more emerged from the north. This time, she took headshots. No time for mercy. No time for anything but precision. Her magazine clicked empty. She slammed in her last one. 6 rounds left. A thunderous roar split the sky as 2 F-18s screamed overhead, unleashing fire across the ridgelines. Explosions tore through the snow-packed terrain, throwing Earth and enemy fighters in every direction. The assault faltered. Chaos replaced coordination. Russians scrambled back in disarray. Drake and his SEALs surged forward, laying down surgical covering fire as Echo made their final desperate push to the ridge. Riley fired off her remaining rounds until her rifle went dry, then switched to her sidearm, suppressing enemy movement until the last American soldier was clear. Only then did her legs give out, and she crumpled to the ground. 20 minutes later, a medevac helicopter blasted down through the snowstorm, rotors whipping the world into a white spiral. Riley sat propped against a rock, while Lockridge tightened fresh bandages over reopened wounds. Her leg had ballooned, her ribs had gone from broken to something worse, and her body had finally reached the end of its negotiations. Cade approached slowly, weapon slung, hands visible. He looked a decade older than he had 3 days earlier, caked in blood, dirt, and a shame that clung to him like frost. "Lieutenant Vaughn," he began, then faltered. What could he even say? "Save it," Riley said, voice flat. She was too exhausted for anger. Anger took energy she no longer had. "Your men are alive. That's what matters." "I thought you were dead," he said weakly. "You ordered them to leave me." The building was collapsing, enemy closing in. I had to make a tactical call. "You made a choice," Riley said, eyes locked on him. "And you'll live with that choice for the rest of your life. But right now, Captain, you need to answer something else. Who compromised this mission?" Cade blinked, thrown. "What?" Drake stepped forward, holding a tablet. "Captain, we need to review your intel sources. This entire operation, from your mission briefing to your extraction point, was engineered to put U.S. soldiers into a kill box. Someone fed you bad intel. Someone wanted Echo wiped out." Cade stared at the data scrolling across the screen, his face draining of color. This can't be right." "It's very right," Drake said. "Your briefing came from a corrupted channel. Maybe a double agent. Maybe compromised data. We're still investigating. But Lieutenant Vaughn saw the truth first. You were being set up for annihilation." Cade sank onto a crate, stunned. "Who did this?" "We don't know yet," Drake replied. "But when you report to command with Vaughn still alive, whoever orchestrated this is going to realize their plan failed. That makes all of you witnesses, which means it makes all of you targets." Mercer, his legs splinted, face pale, spoke up from where he was seated. "Sir, the LT saved our lives. Every one of us." "She did," Cade said quietly, "after we left her to die." "Yes," Mercer replied simply. The truth landed like a stone. Vale stepped forward, serious and steady. "Captain, request permission to file a supplementary report. The official record needs to reflect what actually happened." Cade looked at his soldiers, the ones who had followed him without question, the ones Riley had fought to protect anyway. Then he looked at Riley, the soldier he'd abandoned and who had still come back for them. "Permission granted," he said softly. Then to Riley, "I can't undo what I did. I can't return those days to you, but I can make sure the truth is recorded." "The truth," Riley said, "is that you made a pressured call. Maybe the wrong one. Maybe the only one you felt you had. But the truth is also that 30 American soldiers are alive because a SEAL team trusted me, and because I decided that being abandoned doesn't mean abandoning others." Drake's radio crackled to life. "Echo 7, SEAL Command requesting full debrief on recovery operation and intelligence compromise. Investigation team en route." "Copy," Drake replied. He looked at Cade. "Captain, your whole unit will have to give formal statements. The intel failure will be torn apart piece by piece." Cade nodded, shoulders heavy. He knew the storm that was coming, and Lieutenant Vaughn's role in preventing casualties will be fully documented. "Understood," Cade said quietly. The medevac crew began loading the wounded. Mercer first, then Creed, then 2 more Echo soldiers who'd been hit during the firefight. The crew chief turned toward Riley. "Ma'am, you need evac too. Those injuries aren't minor." Riley pushed herself upright, using her rifle as a makeshift crutch. Every movement felt like fire ripping through her ribs and leg, but she refused to be carried out. Not after everything she'd survived. "I can walk," she said. "Vaughn," Cade started. "I said I can walk." She limped toward the helicopter, Lockridge stepping in to support her opposite side. Drake and the rest of the SEALs closed in around her, forming a protective arc that said more than any words ever could. As the helicopter lifted off, Riley glanced down at the battlefield. The snow-covered ruins, the ridgelines where she'd made impossible shots with a broken rifle, the place she'd been abandoned, and the place she came back from. Mercer, sitting across from her, met her eyes. "Why'd you come back for us?" "Because someone had to do the right thing," Riley said. "Might as well be me." Vale shifted next to him. "The captain's going to face an inquiry for leaving you behind." "Maybe he should," Riley said simply. "But I didn't save him. I saved you. All of you deserved a chance to go home." Cade, seated at the far end of the helicopter, didn't speak. But his expression held the weight of a man who'd been handed a grace he knew he didn't earn, and couldn't repay. Drake leaned closer to Riley. "Once we get back to base, Command's going to want every detail. How you survived. How you gathered intel. Your whole tactical picture. Expect hours of debriefing." "Can't wait," Riley said dryly. "And they'll want to know if you'd consider a transfer." "Transfer?" "SEALs are expanding our operational scope, searching for people with specific abilities, long-range precision, independent action, and the ability to make hard calls in impossible situations." He offered the faintest smile. "You'd fit right in." Riley thought about it. The Army had been her home for 8 years, but it had also left her to die in the snow without hesitation. "I'll think about it," she said. "That's all I'm asking." The helicopter thundered north toward friendly territory, toward safety, toward a future Riley had been certain she wouldn't live to see 3 days earlier. Below them, in the ruined streets of Varkova, the broken church bell tolled again, marking time for no one. Yet, in that hollow sound, Riley heard something else, the quiet proof that survival wasn't the end of a story, but the beginning of a new one. 3 days later, Forward Operating Base Sentinel, American Sector. Riley sat in the medical ward with her leg elevated and her ribs tightly wrapped, watching snow drift past the window. Christmas had come and gone with little notice, lost in the storm of debriefings, intel analyses, and official statements. The investigation into the compromised mission was in full swing. Cade faced a formal inquiry. Task Force Echo had been pulled from operational status pending review, and Riley had been ordered to rest, something she was notably terrible at. Drake walked in without knocking, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Figured you needed this." "I thought SEALs didn't knock," she said. "We don't," he replied. "That's why I just walked in." He handed her a cup. "How's the leg?" "Doctors say 6 weeks before I'm fully mobile. Ribs will take longer." She shrugged slightly. "Could have been worse. Could have been dead." Drake sat beside her bed. Command finished the preliminary review. The intel officer who fed Echo their mission plan was getting information from a corrupted source. Russian military intelligence operation, running for 2 years. They've compromised at least a dozen missions. "So it wasn't personal," Riley said. "No," Drake said gently. "You were just unlucky enough to be sent on a mission designed to fail." He paused. "But Cade's decision to abandon you, that's its own investigation." "What happens to him?" Riley asked quietly. "Depends on how generous the review board is feeling. Best case, he gets a formal reprimand and reassignment. Worst case, court-martial." Drake exhaled. "Most likely, forced retirement with a scarred record." Riley took a careful sip of coffee. "He made a bad call under pressure. He shouldn't lose his entire life over that." "You're defending him?" "I'm being practical," she said. "Soldiers screw up. If we court-martialed every person who made a bad decision in combat, we'd run out of soldiers." That's charitable, Drake said, considering he left you to die. He left me behind, Riley corrected. I'm the one who decided not to die. She looked over at him. What about the transfer you mentioned? Still open, Drake said. SEAL Command was very impressed. More than impressed. You operated solo for 3 days in hostile territory, gathered mission-saving intel, coordinated a rescue, and prevented a massacre. That's exactly the kind of operator we look for. I'm Army. You were Army, Drake replied. You can be Navy if you want to be. Riley let that sink in. The Army had shaped her since she was 22, but it had also abandoned her when she needed it most, proving it was as flawed and political as any other system. I'll think about it. Take all the time you need. Drake stood to go, then stopped in the doorway. For what it's worth, Vaughn, what you did out there was extraordinary. Most soldiers in your position would have found a hole and waited for rescue. You turned abandonment into an offensive operation. That's not training. That's who you are. When he left, Riley leaned back against her pillow and watched the snow drifting outside the window. The ward was quiet, just soft monitor beeps and distant bass noise. Lighter footsteps approached. Chen appeared hesitantly in the doorway. Ma'am, do you have a minute? I've got about 6 weeks of minutes, Riley said. Chen stepped inside, holding a small, wrapped bundle. The team wanted you to have this, as a thank you. Riley opened it. Inside was a photograph, Task Force Echo before the mission. Smiling, relaxed, believing themselves safe. On the back, someone had written, You brought us home. Thank you. Mercer asked me to tell you he's sorry, Chen said, for doubting you, for everything. He knows now you were the reason any of us survived. Mercer needs to focus on healing his leg, Riley replied, not apologizing for being human. He also wanted you to know, if you ever need anything at all, Echo's got your back, for real this time. Riley studied the picture. They'd followed orders, just as she would have. They'd made mistakes. They'd lived with the consequences, and she'd given them a second chance, not because they deserved it, but because mercy mattered more than revenge. Tell Mercer I appreciate it, she said softly. Tell them all. Chen nodded and slipped out. Snow kept falling. That evening, as the base prepared for a delayed Christmas gathering, carols echoing faintly from the mess hall, decorations that looked strange in a war zone, Riley received one more visitor. Captain Damon Cade stood in the doorway, this time waiting rather than walking in. Lieutenant? Captain, she replied. She gestured to the chair. Cade sat, looking older and more worn than she'd ever seen him. I've been relieved of command, he said. Pending the final inquiry. The preliminary findings are clear. I made a catastrophic call under pressure, and it nearly cost multiple American lives. It cost my trust, Riley said. Yes, his voice cracked. And I don't expect to earn that back. But I wanted you to know I recommended you for commendation. Valor, leadership, exceptional courage. All the traits I failed to show when it mattered most. A commendation doesn't undo what happened, she said. No, Cade whispered. But it's the least I can do. He stared down at his hands, the weight of everything he'd done, and everything Riley had survived, settling between them like snow. I keep telling myself it was a tactical call, Cade said quietly. That the math was simple. Risk 12 soldiers trying to save one, or save 11 by retreating. But the truth is uglier. I was scared. I thought going back for you would get everyone killed. And I chose fear over principle. Riley didn't rush to fill the silence. He deserved to sit with that admission. Finally, she said, You made a choice, the wrong one. But you're here now, taking responsibility. That counts for something. Does it? Cade asked. It has to, she said. Because if soldiers can't learn from their mistakes, if we can't admit failure and grow, then we're just machines running orders. And we have to be better than that. Cade rose slowly. I don't know what the inquiry will decide, but whatever comes next, I want you to know. You're the kind of soldier I always thought I was. The kind I wanted to be. I'm sorry I didn't live up to that when you needed me. He left, without waiting for her answer. Riley looked back out the window. Snow drifted over everything. The scars, the wreckage, the battlefield, softening it into something clean for a little while. Her leg pulsed, her ribs ached, her body meticulously logging every moment she'd pushed past human limits. But she was alive. And in a few weeks, she'd be healed enough to make a choice. Stay with an army that had failed her, or join a team that had shown her what loyalty meant in practice. Either way, she'd survived something that should have ended her. She had turned abandonment into victory. She had proved that who you are matters more than what happens to you. A knock sounded at the door. Drake stepped in, this time with Lockridge and Calder beside him. We're heading to the delayed Christmas thing, Drake said. Thought you might want company. I'm not cleared to leave medical. We asked, Calder said. Doc said if 3 SEALs drag you around, you're considered supervised. Lockridge rolled in a wheelchair. Your chariot awaits, Lieutenant. Riley actually laughed. Really laughed. For the first time in days. You're serious? We don't joke about Christmas, Calder said with fake solemnity. She let them help her into the chair, letting them wheel her through the base corridors toward the mess hall, where carols played and soldiers pretended, just for a little while, that the war wasn't right outside the fence. The moment they entered, conversation stopped. Everyone knew who she was by now. The soldier left behind, the sniper who'd survived alone behind enemy lines, the woman who'd returned with SEALs and saved the very unit that abandoned her. Then, Vale began clapping. Slow at first, then faster. Mercer pushed himself upright on his injured leg and joined in. A heartbeat later, the entire hall erupted. Soldiers from every unit, people she'd never met, people who simply knew the story and understood what it meant. The applause rolled through the room like a wave, drowning out the carols, the wind, the memories. Drake leaned down. They're not clapping because you lived, he whispered. They're clapping because you showed them what it looks like to be better than the worst thing that happens to you. Riley looked at the faces around her. Young soldiers, veterans, people from half the world, all wearing the same uniform, all fighting the same war. People who understood that battles weren't only fought with bullets, but with choices. Who you decide to be when everything goes wrong. She raised her coffee cup. Someone had swapped it with something stronger and offered a simple toast. To coming home. To coming home, the room echoed back. Outside, snow kept falling. The war kept existing. The world stayed complicated and dangerous, and full of moments where you had to choose between fear and principle. But for one night, in a mess hall decorated with mismatched Christmas lights, surrounded by people who decided kindness mattered more than convenience, Riley Vaughn let herself believe something important. Being abandoned wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning of a better one.